The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Bostrom. I'm the Member Engagement Manager for Rails, and this is the Rails Online Roundtable 20s and 30s programming. We're really excited to host this event today, and if you're confused about what it is, don't worry. This is only the second time we've held one of these events, and if you didn't attend the first one, you might be a little bit confused about the format. It's not really a webinar. It's more of a chance for you all to share. Rails has some fantastic networking groups, and they range from topic specific to region specific, and they get together monthly or quarterly to talk about issues in and around libraries. We wanted to harness that in an online format, and so that's why I'm really excited to be joined by Lauren Maxwell and the 20s and 30s programming group, one of our fantastic networking groups around Rails. They've been doing great things for a long time, and we wanted to bring this concept to more of our members around Illinois, so here we are. Let me talk to you a little bit how things are going to work today. I'm going to do a quick introduction and talk about some other things that are happening around Rails. Then I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. She's going to do a quick presentation to kind of kick off the topic. And then the second half is going to be a networking discussion, and it might be a little strange. It's going to take place entirely in the chat box. So I'm going to type the questions, post them there. You're going to respond. And it will go back and forth. I'll read them, but unfortunately, GoToWebinar doesn't allow participants to see other people's posts or answers, so that's a little frustrating. I'm going to try to read everyone's answer, and Lauren's going to try to do some commentary for us so that we are getting a collaborative approach, as many ideas and opinions as possible. And at the very end, I'm going to come back, wrap it up, we're still experimenting with this format, so please try to stay with us. Okay, now for some Rails news and opportunities. I'm excited to share with you some things that you can take advantage of as Rails members. Some of these things are active components that you can take part in. Others are just purely for information. A lot of our public libraries out there are talking about data and how they use and collect data in their own libraries. If you're new to collecting quantitative data, we have a great webinar that's coming up. On Thursday, June 13th, Ann K. Emery will present simple spreadsheets. The great thing about this program is Ann will be giving tips on using all sorts of platforms, Google Sheets, Apple Numbers, and of course, Microsoft Excel. This is a great introduction and would really help anyone make more sense of their numbers. Registration is open, so please check it out and log in via L2. We also have a campaign, and this is for all you outreach people especially. It's called the My Library Is campaign, and we are offering tools and resources for libraries to articulate their value to users, trustees, board members, administrators, and other stakeholders. We're excited to announce that we're launching a new campaign site very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. It will include a forum that you can actually upload your own talking points, stories, videos, flyers, graphics, whatever you have to share. So please look out for that and help us make that as vibrant as possible. Much of what Rails does is to sort of facilitate this sharing and resource sharing, and this is another opportunity for you to partake in that. Biblia Board. Biblia Board is a platform that anyone physically located in the state of Illinois can access, and all you need is a device and Wi-Fi. We're really excited about some of the new collections that are going into Biblia Board. We have graphic novels, we have open educational resources, and we've also started a Facebook campaign to help promote the service to patrons. So look on our Facebook page. They're easy posts to share and reshare. Help us us promote this. Again, it's available to anyone, so they don't need a library card, they don't need their login information. All they need is a device and Wi-Fi, and they can access it as long as they're in Illinois. We're also excited about Explore More Illinois. This is our museum and cultural attraction pass program. It's free for any Illinois library card holder. And if your library isn't already signed up, reach out to us here at Rails. And the only thing you as staff members need to do is help to promote the program to patrons. We're also looking for you to help identify cultural attractions. So if in your town you know of something like an art gallery, historical society, theater company, whatever, please let us know. We'd be happy to approach them. We also have information on our website that you can share with them. It's a great way for them to get their information out to a wider public. There are 3 million public library card holders in the Rails region, and this is a way that they can get more exposure to those people. So that was a little bit of Rails news and opportunities, and now I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. Lauren is the reference librarian at the Geneva Public Library District. She is also one of the conveners of the 20s and 30s programming group. So Lauren, welcome to the Roundtable.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here. I am really grateful for the opportunity to talk to everybody, so thank you to Rails. Our networking group is the first thing that you'll see because numbers come before letters if you click on the networking groups list in the Rails website. So we would be more than happy to welcome all sorts of new members. We're going to do a quick overview of 20s and 30s programming, how I think about 20s and 30s programming, how the group often thinks about 20s and 30s programming, how to implement it in your library, and some best practices and pro tips that we've all stumbled across along the way. So the first question that we often have to answer when doing 20s and 30s programming is, why do we do it anyway? We do it for the same reason that we do any age-specific programming. Every age group has unique informational needs, unique social needs, and in 20s and 30s in particular, they're going through a lot of significant life change during that period. So there are some unique things about being in your 20s and 30s, and age-specific programming lets us target those things effectively. It also helps us to bridge between teens that are using the library and those people that we often don't see again until they have young children that they bring back to the library as adults. 20s and 30s programming gives us a moment to engage with those patrons in a really fun and effective way, so that we don't lose them as library users in those nebulous early 20s years. We've also seen that general adult programs tend to attract a bit of an older audience. They tend to attract middle-aged and senior-aged people, and often people in their 20s and 30s have expressed that they don't feel comfortable in a room where they're the only person in their age group. So giving them an opportunity to attend programs that are specifically for them helps them to feel more comfortable and helps them to feel that the library is an accessible and welcoming place. And then finally, the digital age has not, in fact, made it easier to maintain meaningful social connections. So this age group often expresses that it's really hard to meet people. You can no longer just walk up to your friend on the playground and ask if they want to be friends. It's a little bit more difficult to find places where you can connect with other people in your peer group. So the library has a unique opportunity to be that place and to be a meaningful touchstone for people in their 20s and 30s. How do we get started in 20s and 30s programming? The first and most important thing is to talk to your community to make sure that you are offering something that they're going to be really excited about. There are people in their 20s and 30s in nearly every community, so there's almost always going to be somebody who would be excited about a program that is created especially for them. But there are certain communities that are going to have even more success with 20s and 30s. Personally, in Geneva, our statistical numbers don't actually support having a high 20s and 30s interest population, and yet we still manage to get a whole lot of people that are really excited about coming to our programs. So demographics aren't the only thing you need to consider, but it's certainly one of the first things to look at. Also talk to your library management, make sure that this is something that they're excited about and that they would support. You may have to do a little bit of PR internally to get management on board with starting 20s and 30s programming. But once you're there, once you have the green light, it is really wonderful to work in libraries because we are all willing to talk to one another and share ideas. There are lots of libraries, not just through Rails, but countrywide that are doing really fun things for 20s and 30s. You can network with all of them. You can follow them on their social media pages, and you can see what kinds of things are successful in their areas. We at Geneva got a really good start with our 20s and 30s programming because we have a lot of staff members that are in their 20s and 30s. We asked them what they would be most interested in, what kind of library programs they would attend, and those are the first things that we started to offer at the library. But if you don't have staff members that are in this age group, that's no problem. Just ask anybody that you see that is in this age group or that might come into contact frequently with this age group. They'll all have great ideas, some not so great, but you can take a look and see if it's something that you think that your community would be excited about. And the worst thing that'll happen is that somebody doesn't show up to a program. Logistically, when you're implementing 20s and 30s programming, often libraries are hesitant to make the age group an explicit recommendation in their programming listings. From personal experience, I can tell you it was a little bit of a bumpy ride when we did that at Geneva to start off, but over time it has been incredibly helpful to have that 20s and 30s label on all of our programs. It helps to preserve the integrity of what we're trying to accomplish, which is creating a peer group and social connection for 20s and 30s while also serving their informational needs. And having a piece of paper that says this program is designed for people in their 20s and 30s, can we recommend that maybe we'll implement it for your age group at another time, can be really helpful in creating a successful programming schedule. I would also make sure that you define your goals and targets very clearly, that you also choose a very specified period of time to accomplish those goals. If you give yourself 6 months to see if you can build a one-time-a-month board game night and see where you are at the end of that 6 months, then that is much easier to measure success. It's much easier to see areas for improvement if the target is clear for you. And finally, it was really helpful to have a dedicated budget line as we started our 20s and 30s programming schedule. Not everybody has the ability to do this, but if it is within your library's power to provide this for you as you start looking at 20s and 30s programming, it's really an implicit communication that 20s and 30s programming is valued, and it gives you just a little bit more autonomy to do some really fun and out-of-the-box kind of thinking. So what kinds of things work? There are two different kinds of philosophies. We have several different libraries that regularly come to our networking groups. Many of them offer a wide variety of one-time programs, so not things that are generally repeatable. And then there are others that offer a lot of regularly scheduled programs where the same group comes on a predictable evening each month to come to a particular kind of program, whether it's a board game night or a book club. At Geneva, we offer both of those things together. We offer a set of regularly scheduled programs and insert a lot of one-time, exciting programs so that we balance it out just a little bit. We also work really hard to make informational programs into a collaborative learning experience rather than a lecture-based environment. People in their 20s and 30s have very recently often been in school and are not really excited to listen to a whole lot of lecturing, but they are excited to share ideas and learn from one another. So the more your program is and sounds in their programming description like it's going to be a collaborative learning experience, the more successful an informational program might be. We also love to incorporate nostalgia from the 90s and 2000s into our programming. Fandoms like Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and a lot of things that are currently trending will often pique the interest of people in their 20s and 30s. I am in the habit of holding quite a lot of programs off-site. It helps people to feel more comfortable with the library over time. They attend something, for instance, at the local forest preserve. We did a light hike, and they attended 2 or 3 of those kinds of programs before they thought maybe the library was a safe place to visit as well. It helps to give them an introduction to the library without having the very scary experience of having to come to the library and experience something that's completely out of their comfort zone. We also work hard to provide unique experiences for 20s and 30s. I have a listing of some of those other kinds of programs a little bit later, but the more special and exciting your program feels, the more likely it is that you're going to attract 20s and 30s to that program. So here is a list of programs that have worked well according to all of the people that we network with in our group. Generally speaking, board game night is a great place to start, but there are a lot of social programs listed on the left-hand side there. Some informational programs that are unique to this age group, particularly buying your first home and getting started in your career field. Some of those unique experiences we've done at Geneva are an escape room, a murder mystery, after-hours laser tag. All of those things get people really excited to come to the library kind of as a side experience rather than as the main experience. So they're more excited about the escape room, but it's in the library, and now they've visited the library, and you're more likely to be able to engage with those patrons in the future. If you're looking for more ideas, I wholeheartedly recommend that you check out Jez Lehman's idea list. She's the librarian at the Indian Prairie Public Library. She has been doing 20s and 30s programming about as long as I have, and has an incredible list of 20s and 30s programming ideas. That'll be linked in the slides as you get the follow-up email with the recording. So real quick, here at the Geneva Library, here's an overview of how we got started and all of the specifics for our particular programming schedule. 20s and 30s programming was very much a surprise to us. It was something that we heard in a 2014 community survey. We were investigating whether or not the community would support a new building project, and one of the pieces of information that we weren't expecting to find out was that people in their 20s and 30s really felt like they were looking for a social place in the library to be with peers in their own age group. So in fall of 2015, we started a schedule of 20s and 30s programming. Right now, as it's developed over time, we do 3 monthly programs. We do board game night, we do a book club called Books and Brews, and we do a monthly craft program. The craft program has been really fun to watch grow, particularly because it has now become a sort of informal date night for many couples. So you never know who it is that might come into your program. That was a total surprise to me. I also work hard to offer 1 or 2 additional programs every month, which almost always includes a quarterly informational program and a unique experience event type program. And then we fit in as many other programs as allows inside that program planning quarter. About 70% of our 20s and 30s program attendees are local residents. They're from within like a 10-minute drive. But many of those residents don't yet have a library card. So I am often encouraging people to sign up for a library card, to go to their home library to get a library card. But what is surprising is that about 30% of our participants are coming from pretty far afield. Some have come from 1 or 2 hours away to come to our library programs, which astounds me. But they are looking for these very unique kind of experiential things that they can participate in with their peers. I would love if they all had libraries that were a little bit closer to them, that were offering similar kinds of things. For those that are statistically driven, so far for our 2018-2019 fiscal year, our average program attendance here is 10.55. We have about a 35% no-show rate, which is average for our library. It's not unique for 20s and 30s programming, but we do see an increased walk-in rate in 20s and 30s. Our walk-in rate is 18.5%, and general adult programming has a much lower walk-in rate. And finally, I can't talk about 20s and 30s programming without talking about Meetup, which is the most spectacular tool that you will find in connecting with people in their 20s and 30s. It's a social network that's based on shared interests, so it gives you an opportunity to join groups, to RSVP, to attend events, and as an organizer, you can manage attendance, you can see who's coming ahead of time, you can even see a profile photo if they've provided one, so you know who you're on the lookout for. You can send individual messages, which is incredibly helpful for those that have questions in advance of the program and want to check a couple details before they sign up. It gives them a very low stakes way to contact the program organizer. And we create several groups here at the Geneva Library. You can use Meetup to create up to 3 groups. We maintain different group sets for board game night, for book club, and for all of our other programs, because they tend to attract unique program attendees. It does have a monthly subscription cost, but it is a resource I wholeheartedly recommend. It's very worth the funds that you have to spend. One downside is that it does require participants to create an account in order to use the site. Their accounts are free, but for those that have strong privacy concerns, you may have to manage dual registrations with Meetup and with your internal library registration. But you can control the security and accessibility of your group. If you have any more questions about Meetup, we are all more than happy to answer, but it is where people in their 20s and 30s already are. So it is your library's way of meeting the patrons that you're looking for where they already are and inviting them to come into the library with you. So real quick, that is our 20s and 30s programmers group. You can click that link later. That is my contact information. I'm more than happy to answer questions. And we are ready, I think, to open it up to chat questions.
Lauren, thank you so much. That was great. I love the stat about 70% being library card holders. I think that's fantastic, and the fact that you've measured, the walk-in rate and all of that is just a really cool way to quantify it and see how it's working. I think there's a lot of people probably in this forum right here who have planned an event and it hasn't necessarily gone the way that they expected it. So to see and kind of hear and have a forum to talk about this is fantastic. Okay, so at this point, we are going to move into our text discussion. I encourage you all to expand the chat box. So if you look on the right side of your screen, you should see there's a chat section, and you can actually click a button to on docket from your control panel. I'm going to submit the questions again by text, but I'll also read them. I would appreciate if you participate by making sure your question correspond with that answer. So if I write Q1, you write A1, so it's like that. And then address other people in the forum if you want to do so by at Dan or at Lauren, things like that. So this is a chance, and this is a chance for you to talk about your experiences, to share what you have going on, what you might be interested in. So we'll start doing that. Okay, so the first question is pretty easy, pretty great for Lauren. Lauren, maybe you can just start off and talk a little bit about your group, your networking group. Like, how many libraries do you have? How often do you meet?
Sure. We meet quarterly. Our next meeting is actually next Wednesday, May 22nd, at the Des Plaines Public Library. We would love to have some new faces at that meeting. We tend to meet every 3 months, and we tend to have them planned out at least 6 months to a year in advance, so you can check your calendar and see if you're available to join us. We currently have about 65 members of our group. I can't tell you exactly how many libraries that represents, but we typically have about 8 to 10 people representing different libraries, public, academic, at our networking meetings.
Wow, that's a huge group. Okay, that's great to hear, and I do invite everyone to that. That's fantastic. Okay, I am typing in the first question. Hold on one second. The first question is why target 20s and 30s? Why would you as a library, or why would you as a programmer target that group? And while we're listening, or while people are typing, maybe you can start, Lauren, and just talk about why you as a library started targeting 20s and 30s. I know you've already sort of shared that with me, but what were your motivation?
Sure. It actually came as a surprise to us because, as I mentioned, our demographics don't really say that we have a strong 20s and 30s presence in our community. And yet, when we went out into the community and did a survey, we discovered that this was something that people actually articulated very well as being something they were very interested in seeing the library provide for them. Through focus group discussions, it became abundantly clear across several focus groups of a wide variety of ages, not just people in their 20s and 30s, that this was a need that our community needed to address. We often lose people between those high school years and when they have young children that they bring back to the library for story times. And that's a real big missed opportunity, in my opinion. So I'm really grateful to have the support of our library administration to run 20s and 30s programming because they are unique. I get a lot of 20s and 30s that say, oh, I would totally go to that book club, but it's all old ladies. So they really are looking for a place that they can talk to their peers and only their peers.
Thanks, Lauren. That's a great answer. If you're looking for the chat box, I seem to have, oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, I lost the chat box very quickly, but I've reopened it. You should all see it. Okay. And feel free to type, I'm typing in my answer again. Why target 20s and 30s? Why is this important in your library? And again, you should be able to answer directly into that chat box by responding, with your answer with the things that you do in your own library. Laura says, to continuously offer a positive view of the public library to patrons during every stage of life. That's a fantastic answer. Lauren, we've also great answers coming in quickly. Lauren, we've also had a couple questions come in during this time, and maybe you can answer them real quick. As a programmer, Matt asks, as a programmer, how much of your programs do you host? How do you feel to have an extroverted to succeed in retaining? And do you feel that you have to be extroverted to succeed in retaining attendees? That's a good question.
Sure. To address that second part first, I personally am not particularly extroverted, but I actually don't think that extroversion is necessarily the best program host. Sometimes an introvert is more able to read the room, is more able to connect with people on a very individual level, which is very important in 20s and 30s programming. If people don't feel that they've made a personal connection with you, often they won't come back. So I would say that either an extrovert or an introvert can be successful in seeing repeat attendees. What's really important is not so much your personality type, but your investment in the people that are attending your program. To address the first part, I host all of my own programs, with the exception of board game night. We have an outside contractor who comes in because I am unavailable on the evening that we traditionally hold board game night. If I were available, I would host it myself. So I am doing 4 to 5 programs, sometimes 6 or 7 each month, but they're not always on a like very intense schedule. A lot of those things are presenters that we've hired to come in, and I am there as a host, but not as a presenter. There are plenty of different ways to do it, but I am there at all of my programs as often as humanly possible, because I do believe that the important part is investing in people and making sure that they feel welcome by an actual human that they will see again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've had some other great questions come in for you, but I want to get back to that first question. You know, the why question. Cassandra says, I'm the teen librarian at Crete. I've had a lot of 20s and 30s coming into the teen space to read young adult books, and they expressed an interest in us having a young adult book club for adults. I created this program a year ago, and it has been a huge success. Great, thank you, Cassandra, for sharing that. Jez chimed in. Hi, Jez. Lauren already covered most everything. Underserved demographic, provides a bridge between teens and older adults. It's hard for our members to meet new people outside of school or work. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Okay, and these are okay. Jane says everyone, regardless of age, should be served by their library. That's great. Yes, absolutely. Okay, a couple questions that we can get to that have come in since I posted that first question. Lauren, one question from Hillary. How do you handle low registration? Do you reschedule specifically for game nights where you need to have a certain amount of people? Great question.
Generally, we take a look at registration about a week in advance. Our magic number is 4. If we have 4 or fewer, then we have strong reservations about whether or not we're going to move forward with the program. But like I said, some programs really surprise you with the number of walk-ins. Board game night in particular tends to have a lot of walk-in patrons. So if you're willing to jump in and you're willing to learn board games, even if you're not an expert yourself, and that is something that works with the way that your library hosts programs, you can run a successful board game night with just 2 or 3 people. But because we do host so many programs here at our library, we choose to assess about a week out and make sure that it is going to be a good use of staff time for us to continue with hosting that program. If it's a force of nature, we've had some light hiking events that have been canceled due to severe thunderstorms. Those kinds of things do get rescheduled. But if we don't get advance registration for those one-time programs, we simply assume that there wasn't much interest in the program in the first place, and we choose not to reschedule those.
Another question, how often do teens ask to attend?
This is something that we talk about quite a lot in our networking group, actually, because there are programs that are very appealing to both high schoolers and 20s and 30s. And in fact, I work very closely with our teen librarian here at Geneva, Martha Sullivan, because we often record or offer the same program for two different audiences at two different times of the day. It cuts down on our programming time, our planning time, and gives both teens and 20s and 30s the opportunity to attend. That said, at our library, we consider anybody out of high school to be an adult, and they're welcome at 20s and 30s programs. I often use the phrase, if you and your parents are comfortable with you attending a program that is more about socializing with 20s and 30s than it is about the actual activity that we're offering, then you're more than welcome to come if they're an older teen. In my mind, 17 is kind of the youngest where it would be appropriate for a teenager to attend our programs. Because again, we curate a 20s and 30s programming schedule. We also curate a teen programming schedule. So as often as possible, we say, I'll talk to the programmer that's in charge of your age group programming and see if that's something we can offer for your age group. We're so excited that you're interested, but can we find you a different program that you can attend for your age group? So there are several different ways to handle it. It really depends situationally.
I think that's very generous. When I look back at my own life, I don't think I became an adult until I was like 35 or something. So that's so sad. After they graduate high school is a good way to end it. Okay, there are some fantastic questions for you specifically, but I want to get more people involved here, more people answering. And we have so many good questions that were developed by the 20s and 30s programming group that I want to get to. So I have the second one, and I'm hitting submit right now. It is, in what ways do these programs create value to the communities you serve? Do you follow the guidelines of the various strategic plans of your member libraries? So that's a question for everyone. Please feel free to chime in. Again, you can answer, that's question 2. You can use A2 to answer that question. In the meantime, while people are answering that question, Lauren, I've got another one here for you. Okay, this is an interesting one. Amy asks, do you feel it's best to program for 20s and 30s if you're in your 20s and 30s?
That is a very tricky one. I personally am in my 20s and 30s. I do think it makes you very approachable, but anybody can program for any age group. I really believe that that's true. I don't ascribe to the idea that a teen librarian must be young. It's really about valuing the people that you're running programs for. So if you believe that 20s and 30s have a place in the library, I think you're the perfect person to run 20s and 30s programs.
Good advice. We have a couple more questions. I want to go back quickly to the first question. We have a couple more answers to that first question about why target this group. Corey had a great answer. A lot more people in their 20s and 30s are deciding not to have kids. This means that they may leave the libraries after their teens and not come back to the library until they are quite older. If we can target this group now, we can have lifelong library users. That's fantastic. Brittany, we are always trying to move towards being more inclusive in our programming. We do have a gap in our programming between teens and child rearing years. Very good. Someone else, Linda, asked the same question. Do you need to be in the 20 and 30 age group to present/host? But you already answered that one, so fantastic. Kim asks, oh, this is a really good question. Do you work with colleges and universities to attract those students? Do you have academic libraries as group members?
Our networking group does have a handful of academic libraries because that is very much in the target age group. But our library personally here, we don't have many local institutions that are best served by our community. There are several local community colleges that are better served by other library districts. So we don't have any strong connections here at Geneva, but the networking group at large definitely has some academic members.
I have to say, this is we have so many questions out there for you, Lauren, and your group. So we'll try to get to as many as possible. It seems like there are more questions than there are answers right now, but it seems like it's a great topic. People are interested in it. Okay, so Cassandra asks, is it hard to find presenters to conduct presentations for this age group?
Yes. However, if you have joined our networking group, you will have access to a shared drive that Jez Lehman, who I mentioned before and has asked a couple questions, or contributed a bit. She has started a list of 20s and 30s specific presenters that have worked well at other libraries. It can be difficult to find somebody who's willing to tailor a program to 20s and 30s, but really what's more significant is finding a topic or subject area that is going to be really appealing to 20s and 30s. That's where I tend to struggle most. Is those informationally based programs appealing to 20s and 30s, because they all have Google, so they believe they have all of the answers. Really, it can be a bit of a challenge, but many of the traditional library programmers are great places to get started.
I'm going to go back to a few of the answers for the second question, and that was, in what ways do these programs create value to the communities you served, following the guidelines of various strategic plans. And Cassandra said it creates value by making patrons aware that the library is here for them and cares for their interests. Absolutely. Jez answers, my library strategic plan promotes learning, collaboration, and connection, and all of those things are served through 20s and 30s programming. We teach new skills while having fun and providing an easy, safe environment for patrons to meet new people while being able to do an activity at the same time to make connections easier. That's fantastic. Jez also says, I found that if you reach out to presenters we've used for general adult programs in the past, they're happy to tweak things for a younger age group. Lots are excited to reach this audience. Yeah, that's a great point. I can see a lot of presenters being interested in shifting just slightly their presentations in order to fulfill, like a different, different requirement. Lauren, I'm going to take you back to a few questions that we had come in. Zach asks, we've had a lot of debate about offsite programming at my library. Those that are against the idea don't see the value to the library. Do you see a noticeable amount of the 20s and 30s that come to one-time offsite programs beginning to show up for programs at the library?
Yes, but it did take a while. We have done offsite programs at a lot of local businesses here in Geneva. We're very lucky to have a really healthy local business scene, and so many of those local businesses are happy to work with us and present programs at their site. So we've done ballroom dancing, and we've done hiking programs with the Forest Preserve. We've done a paint and sip night because we have one of those businesses here in town, and all of those businesses provide extra marketing for the library. So that's beneficial to us because they use their networks that we might not be tapped into in order to advertise the program to their customers. And I simply find that it's more accessible. People in their 20s and 30s do tend to have a little bit of hesitation into walking into the library because for whatever reason, they feel that that's a very intimidating experience. Walking into a local business and saying, I'm here for the ballroom dancing class is a lot easier. And then that gives them an opportunity to meet their peers. It gives them an opportunity to meet me. I hope I don't present as super scary, so they're willing to come to the library and come to one of our other programs because they know that there will be a friendly face there when they get there. So I do totally see how there are some libraries that have reservations about offsite programming. I can say that my experience is that it is beneficial, but it does take some time.
Yeah, I can see that just being a step towards building more trust, right? Is seeing someone offsite, seeing someone in a neutral location, and then seeing them in more of an engaged location, such as the library. We're moving. Okay, I want to move on to a third question, and I'm hitting send right now. What have been your most successful programs? And this question is for anyone out there. And while people are typing, just remember to answer with A3 if you can. But while people are typing, I want to go back to some of the other questions that are out there for you, Lauren. And if people have questions, people have answers, they want to submit them to these other questions, please feel free to do so. I'll try to match them as best as I can. Okay, let's see here. Going back. Julie asks, would anyone consider? Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Sorry, Colin. Colin asks, what are some of the specific craft programs that you've hosted that got good attendance from 20s and 30s?
The biggest surprise to me was constellation art. We got simple paint and canvas and told people to paint a night sky and then put a few dots on it with constellations. For some reason, that was wildly successful and we barely had enough seats. What's really been more successful is that we run our craft programs on the same night every month. It's always the fourth Wednesday of the month. So even if people don't know exactly what it is that we're making, they show up. We also focus on projects that are very simple but have a lot of opportunities for improvisation. I've found that people in their 20s and 30s are not particularly interested in following a very regimented set of instructions. They're more excited about being given the tools to improvise. So we work hard at offering craft programs that give people the opportunity to do that. Our next one upcoming is we bought some Christmas lights on clearance and we're going to make garlands out of them with fabric scraps. We're decorating candles in the summer. We are doing pumpkin spice flavored anything candles, I think, in the fall because it will coincide with pumpkin spice season. It really has become apparent to me that as long as it's something reasonably cute and Pinterest worthy, people are mostly excited to show up with a friend or with a date and have a chance to connect socially while their hands are busy doing something else.
Pumpkin spice is really blown up in the public consciousness. So I really like that. Some amazing answers are coming in about that third question. What have been your most successful programs? And I want to share some of them. Alexa says DIY dinosaur terrariums. That is awesome. Laura says Instant Pot cooking classes and Pinterest inspired craft nights, which speaks to your answer, Lauren. Stacy says Hamiltoons, and then she also says DIY dinosaur terrariums. Laura said terrariums very popular. Jez says Buy Your First Home has become an annual program. We usually get 30 people or more. Wow. Art therapy, adult color, Play-Doh, etc., and board game nights are quarterly, and I've been asked to do them more often. That's cool. Corey, we created our own escape room and paint and mocktails night. Sounds fun. Cassandra, as stated previously, the Young Adult for Adult Book Club, but also Car Maintenance 101. Oh yeah, learning how to change a tire, how to change your oil. Man, I could use all of those things. Those would be great. Jez says anything Harry Potter gets good numbers too, of course. Stephanie says we're doing a history of hip hop program in late summer, early fall. I'm thinking we'll get a lot of 20s and 30s. Yes, I'm thinking you're right, Stephanie. So great answers. Okay, those are some really cool ones. Lauren, I'm going to take you back to some questions. I'm trying to. Okay. Would anyone consider having specific program? Oh, interesting. Would anyone consider having specific programming for 18 and under 21 age group? So the 18 to 21, would you consider doing a specific programming for that age group?
Here at Geneva, I don't know that that would be as successful. Many of our people in that age group are very college bound and not here in Geneva for the bulk of the year. But I do know that Indian Prairie, Jez, has recently piloted a program that targets this exact age group. So I would wholeheartedly recommend talking to her about her experiences with piloting that kind of programming this summer.
Great, and you can find Jez through the 20s and 30s programming networking group. Another question, Lauren, have you tried card games like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Pokemon? If so, do they work together or as separate programs?
We have not tried it. The one attempt, we didn't get any registrations, so it was canceled. It has not worked for our teen librarian either, but I think that might be very situational to our community. It would be something I would try again, just to see if it really is our community that's not interested or if it was something about our timing. But we have not yet run a successful card game program.
I am going to submit the fourth question here, and again, please feel free to answer using the A4. How much staff time does it take to come up with programs or create programs? So I think that's an important consideration for any library. While people are typing and answering, Lauren, maybe I can get you to answer another question here. Let's see here. Okay. What do you do about older adults, not 20s and 30s, wanting to attend the classes? Do you call them to cancel their registration?
No, our library does not allow us to refuse people entrance to the program if they are not in their 20s and 30s. When people register through our library website, there is a question that is required on registration. Are you in your 20s and 30s? Many people will gladly reply no, looking forward to the program. So we do a little bit of managing people's expectations, but my favorite line to use is this is a program designed for people in their 20s and 30s to provide them a social space to chat with their peers. If you're still comfortable attending, you are welcome to join us. And by far and away, that has been successful. There are rare instances where people say, well, I'll still feel fine and I'm coming to the program anyway. But honestly, when they arrive to the program, they don't feel comfortable in the program because it's the reverse of the problem we described earlier with 20s and 30s, where often at a library program, they're the youngest and only person in their age group at those programs. So it's sort of self-selects. You get a lot of people that, might be a little upset that they're not, in their words, allowed to come to a particular program. And in that case, I do often pass along the feedback to our general adult programmer, who often will provide the same program later. It happens particularly often with our craft programs. And it's actually really lovely because then we get to use all our leftover supplies for a second program because adults are interested in doing that one. So there are several different ways to handle it. There are some libraries that are able to say, no, you must be in your 20s and 30s in order to attend. You can't come to this program. I don't currently have the freedom to do that. But the more often you are able to draw parallels with, well, you wouldn't put a middle schooler in the same program as a first grader, those kinds of arguments tend to work a little bit better. But I like to address that they may not feel comfortable if they attend because they will be surrounded by all those young whippersnappers.
I want to acknowledge that Jez sort of answered this question as well. This was in relation to the earlier question about teens, but the answer was, rarely do I get teens trying to attend, but I regularly get older adults who want to come, especially with crafts. Seniors are used to all adult programs being for them, so there's a bit of a learning curve. I explain to these people why we limit the age and tell them I will pass the program idea on to our adult program coordinator. That's a great solution. So a couple answers for question 4. Question 4, how much staff time does it take to come up with programs, great programs? Cassandra says it depends, sometimes 2 hours or less a month. Other times I could spend a month planning something. That's good. That's good. Jez says, I try to balance my schedule with repeat or easy programs with more involved ones to keep things from getting too busy at any one time. That's a great tip. It depends on the program, but the average for me is 1 to 3 hours planning a program. Going back to some questions. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, this is a good one for you, Lauren. How do you manage to get patrons back to your library when doing offsite programs? Aside from building trust, what are other ways you encourage visitation?
I often refer to myself as a library evangelist. While we're in programs, I am constantly talking about ways that the library could do something in that area for you. Somebody mentions that, oh, I have to go buy a new washing machine and I'm so upset. That's a great time to bring up that your library card can give you access to consumer reports. You can naturally bring up the library opportunities in those kind of conversations while you are offsite. I also frequently bring materials with me. We have mobile circulation capabilities, so I sometimes will bring materials to the program and see if people are interested in checking those things out. But by far and away, offering opportunities for 20s and 30s to use the digital library is the best mode for success. Many of them are not really all that excited and interested about coming in and picking up physical materials necessarily, but if you let them know that they don't have to pay for an Audible subscription, they're really excited.
Yeah, that's a great way to sell them. I'm gonna type in this is question 5. What is your budget for these programs annually and or per program? So I'm clicking send on that right now. You can see it, and please feel free to answer that again with a 5. That's question 5. Going back to a few questions that we had. Where was I now? It's hard. It was hard for me to track these things. Okay. There we go. Okay. Brittany asks, Lauren, do you participate in the 20s and 30s events, or do you introduce the event and stand aside?
It depends on the event, particularly with informational type programs. It's very much an introduce the presenter and then stand aside. When we do book club, I am very much involved because I'm the book club leader. When we do craft programs, I have actually a staff member who is far craftier than I, and she takes the lead on instruction while I run around and do support and chat with people while we're sitting at tables. So it really depends on the program. I walk into every program imagining that I am going to spend a lot of my time socializing with people and making them feel welcome at the library, connecting different people to one another. Say, you should really go talk to so-and-so over there. They just mentioned that they were doing something very similar. So I really see myself as like a party host almost at most programs. So a good host knows when to butt in and when to butt out.
And a good host also knows how to keep track of time, which I'm realizing that we are almost all out of. I'm really sorry for those of you that didn't get your questions answered or for didn't get to submit an answer. But Lauren, I want to thank you so much. You've done so much work here, and the rest of the 20s and 30s Programming Networking Group. You all were fantastic in supplying the questions, supplying answers. Again, I apologize if you didn't get your question answered. We did our best, and you can. There's information. You all are going to get a link to the recorded version of this this event. You'll also get a copy of the slides that you'll be able to download and use. I just want to say thank you again to the 20s and 30s Programming Networking Group. They did a fantastic job. I'm really excited about this, and I hope you are all excited about 20s and 30s programming. Lauren, thank you again, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Everybody have a great one.